Hi there. Today we are joined with somebody who's actually in North Dakota, but they don't live there. They live in Arizona, outside the Mesa area. This is Mary. Welcome to the podcast. Hi,
Hey,
Mary.
Mary. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And you're ready to tell your story? Tell us how you'd like to tell it.
Sure. Um, okay. As I, kind of said in my little bio or whatever, I was adopted in the baby scoop era. I was born in 1965, here in North Dakota in Fargo. My parents lived in North Dakota. Um, and I was 7.5 months old when they adopted me, which was kind of old for that, that time period. But as I dug through things and found out, things later, apparently I was having some issues. I mean, they did say I had a heart murmur right away, but I don't think that was as much of a concern. Um, I was in foster care, from the beginning. And later on, when I got all like my OBC and all my paperwork, I found out that I had actually been transferred from one foster home to another. They must have been related to each other, at least they had the same last name. So it sounds like um, that I wasn't doing very well at the first place because they had so many kids there. And I don't know what so many
They had
kids
did
is or whatever.
Oh, okay. You don't know if it was foster kids or their own kids
I
or
have no idea. They just said I wasn't doing very well because they had so many kids there. So then they moved me to this other foster home. And then I did better. And so like knowing what I know now, I'm sure part of it was just, the trauma, the separation
Mhm.
trauma. And then, if I wasn't getting it, very much attention there, and that type of thing. So, I guess anyway, I don't know, from the very first pictures when my parents adopted me, I was plenty fat, so I must have been eating, I guess. So anyway, I was adopted at 7.5 months. They brought me home. I was their first child. They got married late. Well, they were 30 when they got married, which back then was late. Nowadays it isn't. But and then they tried for between trying to conceive and actually going through the adoption process, it took another 10 years. So they were 40 when they
Oh,
adopted me.
oh,
And then 2 years later, they adopted my younger brother. And so they said they had, I don't know, they didn't talk that much about things like that back then. They would just say, my mom just said, well, um, she had had a couple miscarriages and then she had a surgery and they said it would fix it and it didn't. And so then they had friends who had adopted children and decided that was the route to go because, of course, back then that's what you did if you couldn't conceive. Um, anyway, my mom had done a little bit of part-time work before they adopted me, but then after that she stayed home, was a stay-at-home mom, and that was actually, again, pretty much a requirement back then if you were going to adopt, that the mother didn't work outside the home. My dad was a teacher, and a high school principal, and so
Mary,
I
how
don't
was
know where
your
to go from there.
how it will help you? How was your childhood with your parents?
It was good. I mean, you don't know any. I mean, they were good to me. Like all the like relatives, when they talk about it, they always say, "Oh, They were so proud, of you and so excited that when they brought you home, they actually brought me home on Christmas Eve." So there's that. But and they did, I mean, we never went without anything. They were strict, conservative, Catholic, parents from back then. So
and
um
when did they tell you you were adopted?
just from the start,
Okay,
I always
as
knew.
was the practice.
I always kind of, yeah, I would always kind of joke. I said that about it and say, well, that's how they got out of telling me the birds and the bees. Like, where did I come from? Well, we got you from the orphanage. So yeah, I always knew I was adopted.
Did they say orphanage?
That's what they called it. Yeah, even though it was a
Wow.
foster home, that was what. how they referred to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Was your
I mean,
brother
I
also
guess,
from the orphanage?
yes, he was too. He was a little younger. He was like about 5 months old when they brought him home. So, but still kind of delayed for that time. So I'm not, really
I
sure
was wondering,
what took.
you may not know, but I was kind of wondering maybe because they were an older couple, they were kind of not getting the newborn babies, they were getting older children. That sounds kind of gross, but
It, it could be. I don't know, like, again, later on when I got all my paperwork, there were things in there like when they were doing the home studies and things like that, where they had advised them both lose weight, for so they could be healthier parents, I guess, so to speak. They made comments in there. Like my dad was college educated. Like I said, he was a teacher and an administrator, but my mom had not gone past 8th grade. And again, kind of so common for back in those days. But they referred to her in there as being uneducated, and like that was kind of a ding against her, and things like that. But I mean, I never thought of her as that way because she read a lot, and and things like that. So I guess I never thought of her as any less intelligent, I guess, that
of course
but
not.
that was just something that I found in the paperwork once I got it. So I don't know.
And so, did you and your brother get along? Or
We
was
did.
anybody,
Yeah, normal childhood, like squabbles and things like that. But I thought we got along, really well because it was just the two of us, so,
and did
and we were
anything, where you kind of fall into any, adoptee tropes of one was, the acting out, the other was the
definitely,
pleaser?
yes, definitely. I was the one that acted out. He was the pleaser. And it was 2 years later, I think, was it the primal wound that talked about that? And I was like, oh, yep, I can see all of this happening here. Yes, I was always the one in trouble that would talk back, that would, get mad and yell and, things like that. And he was always the quiet, shy one. And even going through high school, like I was the one that would stay out too late and be drinking and get grounded. And he was a good kid. And then when he did, like finally, one night he went out and he got drunk, and he came home and like literally passed out in a snowbank beside the house because my parents had company and he didn't want to go in. So he thought he'd just lay there and rest. And then they came outside, and I got blamed, even though I was nowhere around him at night, but I got blamed because I should have set a better example for him growing up. So so it was kind of like it, like I said, I was the one in trouble and he was the quiet, good kid, so so yeah, that was definitely a
Do you still
thing.
have a
But
relationship now, the two of you, as grown
oh,
adoptees?
yeah, oh yeah, we're it's interesting, and that's kind of comes later in the story,
Mhm.
but you how do you explain? It's like you don't know what you're missing until you have it.
Mhm.
So my brother and I were close growing up. We're still close. But once I found my actual blood relative siblings, and you just feel that both on both sides, I just felt that instant like connection that I didn't know was supposed to be there, like that I didn't know I was missing all those years. Um, so it's definitely an interesting dynamic.
So did they just tell you the normal things that they told you in that era? Oh, your birth mother loved you so much, she had to give you away and blah, blah, blah.
I, you know,
Did
I
you,
don't
what,
even think I got I don't even think I got the she loved you so much. I think it was just like she couldn't take care of you or she couldn't keep you, so gave you up for adoption. And um like later on when I was always searching, always like in grade school, like
Mhm.
I wanted information. I wanted to know, and again, I was the naughty one, the nosy one, where my brother was just posted through life like whatever, I don't care. But yeah, I would like I had a for example, I had a classmate whose mother worked in the courthouse. So I thought, well, she'd be able to find something. Like, these papers have to be somewhere, and because I was told they're sealed away somewhere. And, so I was always looking for angles to try to figure out, who my real parents were. And, and I'm sure they didn't really, my adoptive parents they were supportive, but to a point, like they said, well, we hope you find them because we know that's something you really want, that's really important to you. But they both passed away young, well, relatively young, and also because they were so old when they adopted us, that my dad was only 66 when he died, so I was only 26 at that time. And then my mom passed away 10 years later. So, so at 36, both of them had already passed, and I had not found anything yet at that point. Like, I snuck away and made trips to Fargo, like thinking, well, I can go to the library and see if I can find a birth announcement in the microfiche in the paper, because I was a huge library nerd and thought, I can find anything there. I can look through old yearbooks. This was in high school. Like, I snuck away with a friend and went to Fargo for a couple of days to go to the church where I was baptized, and, things like that. So I was always, always, always looking. And whereas, like I said, my brother was always like, yeah, whatever. So,
Yeah, that's rare, actually. I mean, not the searching part, but the really digging in, and you really wanted to know. I mean, you felt enough disconnection where you knew, like, I want to know where I'm from.
yeah. And I guess, like I said, there was, no abuse, no substance abuse, no anything like that going on in our home. Like I said, I had a very good upbringing, but yes,
Yeah.
you don't feel like you fit in, you don't feel like you belong. And, and then there was the big age difference. So my parents were older than all my friends' parents, and even in my cousin groups, because we had been adopted so late, like, we were younger than almost all of our cousins. Like, there was a couple that were our age, but again, it was like you'd go to family things and all the other cousins were way older, and so there was always that, like, just, and even among friends, like, I was the kid that kind of you know got picked on, or didn't just didn't fit in. It just, I kind of went through that my whole childhood. My didn't have the right clothes that were in style, or the really surface level things that kids pick on. Like, I was the weird kid, the one that didn't fit in. So I kind of felt that all around in my growing up.
So what you did all this searching and nothing turned up, and how did your life play out?
I got married really young, and just because I don't know, I wanted to, I guess. Whether it was, just trying to get out of the house or whatever, but my dad being a teacher was obviously, education was very important. I was smart. I was an honor student. I was accused of not working to my potential. Like, you could be so much better. I could get all A's and one B, and it's like, well, those could have been all A's if you'd have only tried a little. But anyway, so by the time I was done with high school, like, I was over it. I was bored. I didn't want to go to college. And so I got married, and my first husband and I had a couple of children, and that lasted 20-ish years.
Oh, well, that's
Um,
significant. I
you know,
mean,
well, it is, but it probably lasted, as and there too, there was nothing, no abuse, no, I just wasn't happy. Like, I needed something else, and so we, got divorced, and then I remarried my current husband. But um I, again, as soon as I turned 18, it was like, okay, now I can get non-identifying information. And so I sent the money away and did that. And there wasn't a whole lot that because my parents gave me the paper they had that had the non-identifying information when I was younger, when I was asking for it. So there wasn't a whole lot of new information in that. I in North Dakota at that time, the law was that when you were 21, you could get identifying information, but only with the permission of the birth parents.
Mhm.
So
That's how it was here.
when I turned 21, I tried that. Paid, more money. I think the first time for the non-identifying was like, was that 150 or 250? And then for identifying information and the search, I think was around 400. And so I did that, like pretty sure the day after I turned 21. But they came back and after a little bit and they said there was no birth father on the birth certificate, of course, because that was pretty common back then. But they said as far as the birth mother, they had found her and she had some serious medical things going on in her family. So it was more than she could deal with at the time. So she chose not to set up any kind of contact at that time. Okay. So I waited a couple of years, went back, asked again, can you contact her again, see if things have resolved themselves? And then they got a hold of her again and she said no and to please not contact her anymore.
Oh my
So I'm
gosh.
like, oh. So again, I'm back to like, and by then there was online, like I could do some things online. I hired a company called Omnitrace and that was a few years later, but there too, I'm sure I gave them a couple $1,000s and nothing.
Now, are
I
you
went
still
to
in, were you still in North Dakota at this point?
yes,
Okay.
I've been in North Dakota. I only moved to Arizona like 6 years ago.
Oh,
So
okay.
all this North Dakota. And I went to Fargo, like that's where the adoption, like the adoption agency was. And also I had, I'm trying to put things together and I knew I had been baptized and that was unusual because when I asked them, they said, well, normally the adoption agency did not baptize the babies because they just didn't. They left that to the parents. And my younger brother wasn't baptized when they adopted him. Like he actually got baptized. And so I thought, well, maybe that meant that she kept me for a while or that she was from Fargo. So then and that's like the biggest town in North Dakota. So I went to the church thinking, well, I can get my original baptismal certificate. Nope, they gave me the
The fake one.
with my adoptive parents' name and yeah, the fake one because I'm like, okay, this has my godparents listed as witnesses. They weren't witnesses to this, like they weren't even there at the time I was baptized. Like, how can you falsify a document like that? It just makes me mad. But anyway, went on, looked through all kinds of things, couldn't find anything. Again, hired that Omnitrace, got nothing. Went along and then when I was 49 and I was like, you know what, this is bullshit, excuse my language, but it's like I'm going to be 50 years old and I know nothing. Like I don't have any health information. I have nothing. And this is garbage. I'm an adult.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I'm just going to hit it with everything I've got. So I sent in the DNA test to Ancestry. I put my picture, a baby picture, my non-identifying information, took a picture of that, put all that out there on Facebook. If anybody knows anything, like small towns, whatever, North Dakota, like North Dakota is one big small town. So somebody has to remember something, type of thing. And also when I put that out on Facebook, I didn't find anything other than people messaged me and said, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And somebody said, well, have you tried petitioning the courts? And I'm like, no, I don't think I can do that. And they said, but you can, and so they said, just, hire a lawyer, whatever, draft up a request and have good reasons and a judge might grant it. And so I was like, well, it's worth a try. So I sat down and wrote up, I talked about the fact that both my adoptive parents had passed, so that was not an issue. There's no conflict there. I would like some health history. Like when I was born, I mean, in that 50 years, look how many more things we have discovered are genetic. And, you know, yes, in the non-identifying information, it said everybody's perfectly healthy. Well, most 17 and 19-year-olds are, but what things have
Right.
happened to them since then? You know?
Right.
And their
And
families.
so yes, exactly. Yeah. So I laid all this out, and I mean, it's a crapshoot in North Dakota, but got lucky and got a judge who was like, yes. And, you know, all of a sudden I got the phone call from my lawyer and said, yes, the judge granted your request. And so I was able to go to the state capitol, present that petition from the court, and get my original birth certificate. And um, my my husband now, he was with me that day, so it was a whirlwind. We drove to Bismarck, back and forth to like 2-3 different places to get all this paperwork. Well, then my adoption had originally been finalized in the town where I grew up for the most part, small town, South Central North Dakota. And they're like, the paperwork is there, you know, sealed. And so we like, I'm sure we were driving like 90 miles an hour through the really empty roads in North Dakota. But to get to there before the courthouse closed for the day. And
Okay.
because I'm like, I'm not waiting for tomorrow. And so I called ahead and said, we're on our way. This is my name. I have the, you know, the court order here. Can you please just like get it out so it's ready to go? Because I don't want to, you know, hold you up. And I know you close at 5. So we drove there, got all my papers, and she said, well, you can't take anything, but you can make copies of as many things as you want. So I was able to that's where I've found the notes from the home study and like
Okay.
all that stuff. There was one thing that really surprised me, which I don't know what to make of it yet, but at the top of one of the pieces of paper, the petition for adoption, I think, it had my birth mother's name and where she was from. And it, you know, basically said she's saying that she can't take care of this child, so she's relinquishing, you know, her for adoption. And then these people are adopting her. And so her name was at the top, and my parents had signed it at the bottom. And I'm like, so was that name there all along? In which case they
What?
would have known
I
her
had the
name.
same experience. I have my adoption decree and it has my name and her name, and it's my parents had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
So don't I don't understand. Like, was that covered up? Was that part not filled in yet when they signed? Did they sign it and somehow block it out? You know, or just I don't know, because at that point they weren't alive anymore for me to go and ask them.
And you
So
were
I don't
somewhere for
really know
7
how that all
months.
worked. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
so, and that's also, and then I also, after the courthouse and getting those papers, and I also went to the adoption agency and I said, I want everything, you know, I didn't think I had the right to ask for the notes or case files from before I was born because that's her information, you know, but from when I was born on, I wanted all the notes and paperwork. And that's where I found out about um, the foster homes, the 2 different foster homes, and this, you know, I don't know what would they call it nowadays, failure to thrive or whatever, you know, that I was struggling and not really, you know, eating and was, I don't know, whatever was going on, but, and that I was transferred to the other foster home. And then also I had asked before, I had this caseworker, I had talked to her, I don't even know how many times throughout the years, asking for different little bits and pieces of information. And I had asked about a baptismal certificate. I had asked if there were any baby pictures of me. Nope, nothing like that here. Well, then when they gave me my file, there was my baptismal certificate. There was a baby picture of me and you know, not the not the legal birth certificate, but the one from the hospital where your footprints are on and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff was in there. And so I was
And
able to get all that.
how old was your mother?
She was 18. well, she was 17. She turned 18 like 2 months after I was born. So she was 17 when she got pregnant and had me, senior in high school.
So what did you
And
end up?
my father,
Oh, we're having a big delay.
but
What did you do with that information?
oh man, okay. So that was another wild trip. Like I always said, North Dakota is one big small town. So I was originally from the western part of the state, and like Dickinson and New England area. And so my sister-in-law um, she used to be a nun, and she was a teacher, and she taught in the Dickinson area, and one of her best friends is from that area. And so after we picked up the stuff at the courthouse in Napoleon, my husband called his sister, and she lives on their home farm, or did at that time. And so he said, are these names familiar to you?
Mm.
And she said, that sounds really familiar. Let me do some checking. So she got on the phone with another sister who is still a nun and does pastoral care in a hospital. And so by the time we got to the farm, she had written down the address and phone number of my birth mother and her husband, address and phone number of my grandparents who lived in Dickinson, and the address and phone number of one or two uncles and aunts in Dickinson. She had gathered all that in the half an hour that it took us to drive there. And as it turned out, she knew the one sister that had been a teacher, knew my one of my aunts and uncles, and kind of knew of my grandparents. And the other sister, who's a nun and does pastoral care, actually worked with my birth mother's husband because he was a deacon and also did pastoral care at that same hospital. So they'd been working together for years. So she knew my birth mother and her husband. And so I had all that. And because, me, I'm not going to hold back. I'm just like, all right, let's do this. So I called my birth mother. I should probably take a step back. Before I found all that, I actually figured out my birth father through my ancestry test.
Oh,
I
I
found
was
a second
wondering.
cousin who was yeah, I found a second cousin who was a genealogist who did the family genealogy. And so she gave me enough information to where I, like literally sat with pen and paper and the internet and drew family trees and figured out who my birth father was. And I called him, and he, was very nice. Nope, it's not me. But here, why don't you talk to this cousin? She keeps a lot of the family records too and stuff. And I mentioned a couple of cousins that I had found through putting together this family tree. Yep, I know them and all that. And then when we're at the end of the conversation, he said, well, I can't help you, but you should call this cousin. Okay. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, well, let me ask you this. He said, who's your birth mother? And I said, well, that is the $50,000 question. I said, I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. Oh, okay. And that was the end of the conversation. So then fast forward a few months, and I found my birth mother, called her up, and she, there was no answer. I wrote her a letter, and, told her, who I was, what I found, made it very clear, like, I don't want anything. I just want to know who my family is, that type of thing. And, sent a couple pictures of me and my kids and my grandkids, and sent it registered to make sure, I know she got it. And, then I waited. And then she wrote me back a letter, basically saying, here's health history, here's, I've got a couple kids. Like she had, after she had me, she went off to college, married again, and her husband, fought in Vietnam, came got done fighting in Vietnam, and they were stationed in London. And on his way home from work one night, he was killed in a car accident. And then she found out that she was pregnant. And so there she is at 23 years old, alone and pregnant for the second time. And so she moved back to the United States to his parents, ironically, instead of her own parents, which lived on the East Coast. And so then she kind of met the boy next door, fell in love, got married to him. He adopted my half sister, and then they had a son together. So that's kind of where that went. But she kind of gave me that synopsis in the letter, said she had had some kidney issues throughout the years, but nothing to worry about. It was nothing genetic. And basically said, it's in the past, and that's where I want to keep it. My husband and my children do not know about this, and that's the way it's going to stay.
Mary, that's I was wondering, did she address at all that you had tried to reach out to her twice? Or yeah, I mean, because you went many years. You were like 2 times she was contacted by you. She didn't even, nothing of that came up.
Yes. No, she didn't say anything about that. But because I'm, like I said, kind of like a bull in a china shop when it comes to all this, by the point when I got her letter back, I had already messaged and friend requested. I had found her sisters and my half brother and half sister on Facebook and sent out like friend requests. And
I've done that.
so I had already been in contact with the kids. So that cat was already out of the bag, even though she didn't realize it. And the aunts reached out to me, her sisters, and they were like beyond excited and wanted to meet me and everything. So after I found out who she was, I actually called my birth father back again and said, hey, I have the answer to, I have all my paperwork here. I know who my birth mother is. Do you want to talk about it on the phone? Would you like to meet in person? Kind of thing. We can visit a little bit. Sure, come on over, and gave me his address. And as it turns out, which is important for health information, he had a stroke when he was 52 or 53 years old and almost died. Like he has got some, weakness, partial paralysis of one side ever since then. And so he had like home health care workers come in to help out with some daily things, a couple of times a day. So when I was on the phone with him, he even said, well, come between this hour and this hour, because, this is when my home health care workers are here and, whatever. And then we'll have time to visit when nobody's here. Okay. And at that point, I had not met my birth mother yet. Like I said, I knew who she was. And then he asked me on the phone that day, he said, well, who is your birth mother? And then I told him, and he said, oh yeah, I knew her. Like, you grew up in a town of 500 people. Of course you knew.
Of course you knew her.
And, and then yes. And then he gave me the Bill Clinton line. Like, I never had sexual relations with her. Oh, sure. Okay. And
he did?
Whatever.
But he came up in your
Yes.
DNA.
Yes. Yes. And the man is 80 years old. He is still in denial. He still says,
really?
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. And I've met my half brother. He's a big part of my life. He's wonderful. He said, if he ever admits it, it will probably be on his deathbed. He's a stubborn, old guy. And he's been in, when you're in denial of something for 60 years, you're probably not just gonna be like, oh, okay, I guess it was me after all.
Does he not remember?
I look like, oh, he does.
Okay.
There's another.
What does he say about the fact that a DNA test linked you? How can he deny that? Fake news.
I don't know.
Fake
I don't.
news.
Yes, must be. Yes. I don't know. The thing is,
that's
like,
wonderful.
He was engaged to his first wife at that
gotcha.
time, and she was also pregnant. So I have a half sister who's 3 months younger than me.
I have a half sister 3 months older, and he tried to do the whole I don't know thing, same thing.
Yeah. So he married
Mm,
the other one and, just denied my birth mother. Um, but yeah, so
there you go.
I've talked to him, and after the day when I visited with my birth father, he was beyond nice. Like, he was very gracious. We shared, like, he actually gave me to look at this like huge scrapbook that his mother had put together, like one for all 9 children in the family. And let me look through all the family history, and we talked about a lot of things, and but at the end of the day, he's like, I don't know what else I can do to help you. And, just still like, nope, wasn't me. And so I said, well, it has to be a very close relative if it wasn't you. I'm like trying to, extend grace, give him the benefit of the doubt. And I said, would you be willing to do a DNA test? And that way it would tell exactly how we're related, how closely or whatever. Um, he said, sure. So I left after that. I went and I actually lined up like a DNA test that somebody would come to his home, like his home health care worker could like get the sample from him, because he doesn't, it's hard for him to travel and that type of thing. Um, so when I had all the paperwork ready to go, I called him back and, told him. And as soon as he answered the phone and I said who I was, I said, hey, it's Mary, how is it going? And he like just yelled at me, and he's like, don't ever call me again. I am not your father. I'm not talking to you anymore. Goodbye. Slam the phone down. Like, I literally just sat there in a grocery store parking lot and burst into tears. Like,
Oh,
what happened? So I don't know if family members kind of got involved and said, hey, you better look out. I don't know what she wants from you. I don't know. I don't know what happened. That was the last contact I had.
oh,
I did send him a follow-up letter, said, I'm really sorry. If you change your mind, here's my contact information, sent him a couple more pictures of grandkids, type of thing. And that's, you know, um, and that was the end of it. So like I said, I haven't had any more contact with him. Um,
but you are
my,
close to his son, your
yes.
half brother.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. And that's only been in the
That's good.
last about 3 years. He actually lives in Arizona as well, in the
Oh,
Phoenix area. And he reached out to me and said, we should talk, and like the very first thing he did, he started by apologizing. He said, I've
mhm.
known this was going on. I should have stepped up. I'm really sorry. And, but ever since then, we're like very close. We text each other several times, every so
I'm glad.
often. We've met, we go out for lunch, all the things. So,
Yeah.
so that part is really good.
And so
And
then
then,
your mother, did you ended up meeting her
yes,
finally?
yeah. So I met her sisters first, and like I said, they were all just beyond excited. Um, and then I think the pressure finally got to her, um, because I did write her back after, like, she wrote me her letter, and I said, I've already talked to, like, through Facebook or whatever, talked to my brother, or both of your kids, like, so they already know about me. And as it turns out, they had seen or overheard something years back, so they knew there was another child. But my mother's the kind of person that if you don't want to deal with something, you just put it behind the door and close the door, and it doesn't exist. That's how she deals with things. I'm the total opposite. I'm just like, here it is, deal with it. So she did come around, I think, like I said, due to just kind of feeling the pressure from the rest of the family. My grandpa was 90 plus at the time. Like, he was beyond excited to meet
Oh,
me, very loving, but just kind of, and we talked about it, and he just kind of said, that's just how it was back then. He said, his wife came home and said, oh, Bonnie's in trouble. And so what are we going to do? So they talked to their parish priest, and they arranged for her to be sent to the home for unwed mothers. She was the oldest of 9 siblings. And so they
wow.
told the rest of the siblings that she went off to school and came home, and it was never discussed again. And so but she did come around then finally and agreed to meet at an aunt's place, like, you know, like a few of the aunts and uncles and my grandpa and everybody came over and we had dinner, and then we kind of talked around each other for a while, and then finally some of them left and we just kind of sat down, and you know, I had printed out a bunch of pictures of me growing up, my kids, my grandkids for her, and um you know, we just visited, and then she was good for a few years, and then something set her off. I don't know what it was. Nobody knows what it was. And she wouldn't talk to me for a couple of years again.
Hmm.
And then
Buried
now she has
trauma. I think it's
dementia.
buried
Yes,
trauma. Yeah, it
I
just
agree.
is.
Did you
Yeah.
just say
And
she has dementia now?
Oh.
yeah, so she's in a memory care center now.
Mm.
And now she talks to me. She's cheerful. She's all the
Oh.
things, but she doesn't remember who I am, or doesn't remember why she was mad at me, kind of goes back and forth between those two things, I think. But yeah, she's very, you know, so it's, you know, kind of a mixed, I mean, it's hard because my grandmother died of dementia. She was still alive when I met my birth
Oh.
family as well, but she passed away a couple of years later, and she had been in a care center for dementia, and now my mother. And so that's one of the things that scared, I mean, I think about it every day. Like, what if,
Oh,
you know, am I
I can
next?
imagine.
You know, yeah.
Uh,
So, you know, and I've done lifeline screening because I know that my father was the picture of health and all of a sudden had that stroke, you know, very young. And so, you know, that health information is huge, you know, it at least
Mhm.
helps you know what
I
to look
can't
for.
I can't help but think about the first time you called the day after you turned 21
Mm.
and she couldn't because of health issues. And it just makes,
Mhm.
had you gotten in
Yeah,
touch
well,
back then and, this plight of
yes.
being adopted
And that
from that era.
was her husband. Her husband was actually the one who was having the health issues.
Mm.
He was going through some things that was later diagnosed, I believe, as MS. And
Oh.
so, like, he passed away a few years ago, but he had on and off health issues, and that's apparently what was going on at that point. But also that she just didn't want to. Yeah, she was in denial. She
Yeah.
didn't want to bring back those old memories, you know. So
I have a couple more questions. One, did she confirm your father, who he was?
we've never about it. She has never told me the story of her being pregnant, her being in the home for unwed mothers. I don't know if she's ever talked to anybody about that. She did when my sister asked her after they had found me. She said, because, you know, and I had read The Girls Who Went Away. I had done my
Mhm.
research. I had found how kind of mean and judgmental they were back then. And then so my sister asked her, like, were they mean to you when you were there, or how was it there? And she said, no. She said the nuns loved me because I was a good cook, because being the oldest child in a big family, she did a lot of cooking at home. She said they loved me because I could cook, and she said I got to work in the kitchen all the time. So, you know, she made it sound like it wasn't horrible, but, you know, again, she had me and then just buried it and moved
Right.
on, so to speak. But yeah.
And then are you still in touch with your siblings from her? I mean, do you have a
Yes.
relationship with them?
Yeah. So my half sister, her and I are fine. I mean, she lives, you know, well, she lives in Minneapolis or whatever, so it's not like a drive, but we get together once or twice a year, you know, we'll text or whatever. Um, you know, not super close, but you know, she's kind of far away distance wise from the rest of the family, other than my mother lives right by her now. So
Mm.
in the
Okay.
care center. All the like aunts, cousins, my sister, my mom, like, well, my mom didn't, but the rest of them, like we go on girls trips together, like 2, 3 days.
Nice.
And so we are all really close. And that's one of the things that I noticed. We went on a girls trip to Vegas, like within a year after me meeting everybody. And I said to them too, I said, I have cousins and I have wonderful cousins. I mean, I love my adoptive family, but I said, I have known them for 50 plus years, and I have known you all a few months, and I feel closer. Like you just
Yeah,
feel that connection that you
you do.
know was we were missing all that time. So yeah, it's definitely a thing, you know.
It is.
Wow. Well, thank you, Mary. This has been a really interesting conversation
Gosh,
and just your just will to go
I
find
love it.
out who you are from a young age. It really, highlights that we all deserve to know that,
Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that my birth mother, when she was mad at me and wasn't talking to me at different points in time, was because and I admit that I handled it badly, you know, like just throwing everything out there on Facebook, you know, and then people from her past, you
Desperate
know, said,
times
oh,
lead to
you know, you found,
desperate times lead to desperate
well,
measures. I
yes,
mean, they do. You don't owe anybody an
yeah,
apology for that.
Oh,
I'm
you
sorry.
don't.
They should be releasing information to us. We do what we have to do to find it.
well,
And we shouldn't be
that's the biggest thing.
secrets. We
Yes,
should not be
definitely.
secrets. You know, we're people. We deserve to have our heritage in our lives, the knowing.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Mary, so much. Really nice to talk to you
Yes.
and hear your story. And thanks
Yeah,
for coming
thank
on.
you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's the first time I've ever done something like this.
Oh,
But yeah, it was good.
it was
It's great.
great.
It's a release to do that, isn't it? It
Mm-hmm.
feels like, whew.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Yes, nice.
Bye.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.